So let me read this entire thing and then we can move forward. First of all, disagreement in industry about future of aviation. There is perfect accord on one point. There is going to be a lot more of it. The world's air passengers flew a combined 7.64 trillion kilometers in 2017. By 2037, that will rise to 18.97 trillion kilometers, with about 40% of the increase happening within five intra-regional markets, that is China, India, North America, Europe and Southeast Asia. So if I talk about the first para or the first page, the entire conclusion comes down to one particular thing, that the aviation industry is increasing day by day. The people who are traveling from one place to another via airways is increasing day by day, and the major population is coming from China, India, North America, Europe and Southeast Asia. This is the conclusion of the first paragraph. Let's move towards the next paragraph. Make sure you remember that when you're reading this kind of paragraph, it's important to note down the years and the numbers. You don't have to note it down, but take a mental note of it, that yes, there was a number somewhere mentioned in the first para, there was a percentage was mentioned in the first para, or there was an year which was specifically stated in the first para. This will help you to regain certain important points while doing the question and answers. So once you start reading the question, you'll not get confused and you'll immediately go to the para, that yes, there was an year specifically mentioned in para 1, so with this reference I need to move towards para 1. That will reduce your time wastage and increase the chances of getting the right answer. Moving forward with the next page, I could say, okay, that is speaking a battle over biggest bottleneck holding its back is growth. Airports, the governments that still own many of them, should be more open to privatization to cover a $78 billion funding gap in needed capital investments. Airlines, airports, biggest consumers see things differently. Cost at privatized terminals are higher, and governments should be cautious about such actions in the interest of expanding the aviation sector as a whole. Privatizing an airport does not necessarily make it more efficient. A study has found that there was a little difference between performance of airports 100% owned by commercially oriented government corporations and those majorly contributed by private businessmen. So if I talk about this particular para focuses on the investments which is needed. Like, though the industry is growing very, you can say, gradually, very at a good scale, but the investment putting in, or the investment which is flooding in, is really low. And there is a clear distinction between government owned airports and private owned airports. There is a difference between the efficiency and the management of such airports, which is mentioned in various research reports. Apart from that, the capital funding which is needed, where the government is unable to make that capital available, it is better for the government to opt for privatization schemes where the entire airport could be managed by private enterprises, whereas it is owned by government. That could be one of the solutions, or it could be completely owned and managed by private organizations. That could be one of the solutions. So this is the entire conclusion of para second. Now moving forward with the third para, the key is instead to avoid structures where the incentives for managers are confused or misaligned, such as where private companies are brought in as minority investors, or where managers are essentially bureaucrats swayed by political imperatives. There is a better solution out there, but it is not likely to be very attractive to incumbent airlines, airports, or passengers enamored of the current generation of gleaming terminals build more cheaper airports. So this para more talks about the political things involved and other greediness involved in all this, because constructing an airport is not a small investment. It's a huge investment. It is a $1 billion industry where you need a large space, you need large infrastructure, road maintenance, building, equipments, people to manage all this, specialized staff, etc. So for this, if you need funds, if you need money, and if you need all these things, ultimately political people will get involved. There'll be various, you can say, bad motives also. So for this, it's better that we build cheaper airports, so we'll have more number of airports and more number of accessibility from one place to another. So this is what they have said. Let's discuss the question answers. First question is, what is the growth rate in aviation apart from five intra-regional markets? So apart from those 5 regions which were mentioned in the first para, what is the growth percentage? So as we know, we have read this would be in the para first. I'll just erase everything and I'll start highlighting again. By 2037, that will rise to 18.79 trillion kilometers, with about 40% of the increase happening within 5 intra regions. So 40% is within 5. So the question is without these 5 regions, apart from these 5 regions. So it should be 60%. Within intra-regional markets, apart from intra-regional markets, it should be 60%. The question is a bit confusing, because here, let me read this again. By 2037, that will rise to 18.97 trillion kilometers, with about 40% of the increase happening within 5 intra-regional markets. So we are talking about these 5 regions, basically intra. Okay, the question is asking, what is the growth rate in aviation apart from the 5 intra-regional markets? Intra is written, inter is not written, intra. It should be 60%, though if you are in the examination center, you don't have 60%, of course you'll be choosing 40%, but I have a high probability of answering it to 60%, because I don't make sense, because whatever question asked here and the para says is completely opposite to each other. Okay, so make sure you read the questions very carefully, and there might be a mistake also, but still try to give the most possible best answer, because 40% was given in the para, the answer is 40, but the correct answer should be 60. Why should the government be open to privatization of airports? This was in the second para. If you have seen this para very, you can say, nicely or in a focused way. One second. Okay. Airlines, airports, okay. Costs at privatized terminals are higher, and governments should cautious about both the action. First line, there is sparking a battle over biggest bottleneck holding the growth. Airports, the governments that still own many of them, should be more open to privatization to cover a $78 billion funding gap. So for funding gap, or to bring more money into the airports, we need privatization. That is concluded, or that is taken out of this. Let's see, because they own many airports, because there is a battle for growth. That can be because battle or a gap is written. For necessary capital, that can be the answer. For the limit of government control in aviation industry, I think for necessary capital. If that is not the answer, second would be the correct answer. Third is the right answer, because directly they have told in the second para, as you can see, the thing I have highlighted, cost at privatized terminals, the first one, governments that still own many of them should be more open to privatization to cover the 78 billion funding gap. So capital which is needed, that is required, and because of that we need privatization. So option number 3 is the right answer for this. Okay, let's move more towards the next question. How do airlines see the move for privatization of airports? So how do airlines see privatization of airports as what? Okay, so let's go to the second para again. See, you'll be fascinated, like the answer is given directly. Airlines, we're talking about airlines here. Airports biggest consumers see things differently. So how do they see? Costs at privatized terminals are higher, and government should be cautious about such actions in the interest of expanding the aviation sector as a whole. So cost of privatized terminals and government should be cautious. These are the two things. Let's see what are the options. Feel that costs are high, this is true, so we can say yes, this is correct. Government should be cautious, yes, this is also correct. Interest of aviation sector is important, it decentralizes the authority of control. A and B are right, but apart from A and B, we should see the interest of aviation and decentralizes the authority. I don't think D should be the answer, I think A, B, C should be the answer. Privatizing and doesn't make it more efficient. Okay, it does not necessarily make it more efficient. You have to go back and forth to get the right answer, don't worry about that. I think ABC should be the right answer. Though it's not directly given, but I still feel. See, feel that the costs are high, this is true. Government should be cautious, that is also true. Interest of aviation sector is important. It decentralizes the authority of control. Let's talk about authority here. Authority is not given, so I will go for ABC. I will go for option number 1. Let's see what's the right answer is. ABC is the right answer. Why did I choose ABC? Why I did not choose D? Only and only because in the entire 3 para there was nothing mentioned related to authority. So there was no words or nothing which was mentioned specifically related to authority. So because it is not mentioned, we can completely ignore that. That's okay. Now let's move forward with the next one. What is the key for making airports functional efficiently? Make private companies as minority shareholders. Okay. What is the key for making airports function efficiently? So see, in this para, the second para, last lines. A study has found that there was difference between performance of airports 100% owned by commercially oriented government corporations and those majorly controlled by private businesses. Okay, so the key is instead to avoid structures where the incentives for managers are confusing and misaligned, such as where private companies are bought in minority investors or where managers are essentially bureaucrats saved by political imperatives. There is a better solution out there, but it is not likely to be very attractive to incumbent airlines, airports, or passengers. For the current generations, build more cheaper airports. That is the main theme here. So let me go again. D is the right answer. I'm really sorry, I saw it. Make private companies as minority shareholders, no. Misaligned in provide, not to provide. So here not to provide is the main thing. So we have to make sure that this is also not. Recognizing political, no. Avoid structures of confusion and incentives of managers. So if you read the entire 5 lines, you'll get the exact answer, which is this. Okay. The last question, which of the following is a focal inference of the author in the passage? So this talks about the main focus where the author is trying to make sense out of these 3 paras. What is the author trying to say? That is the question here. So private ownership of airports does not mean efficient management. It could be one of the point, but let's see other options also. Growth of the aviation industry is distorted. No, it's not. Airports are not an obstacle to the growth of aviation industry. Government owned airports are known for high performance. This definitely cannot be the answer. This also definitely cannot be the answer. We have to choose between A and C. So airports are not an obstacle to the growth of aviation industry. I think one is more appropriate because that is somewhere given. They said that private ownership does not necessarily mean it is efficient. So I'll go with A. A is the right answer. Okay. In the next class, we'll be doing the next para. I hope you are enjoying these kind of series so that every day at least you can practice one reading comprehension that enhances your marks in the examination. That's it for today. Let's meet tomorrow with one more typical question and answer session of reading comprehension. Bye everyone, take care.